Dear Building Better Leaders, I used to think being a leader meant setting direction and inspiring people, but these days I feel more like a firefighter, putting out conflict, dealing with people problems, managing egos. Last month, for example, I spent nearly 2 weeks mediating between two team leads who were locked in a turf war over a shared project. It was emotionally draining, endless one-on-ones, tiptoeing around egos and trying to get them to act like adults. By the time it was resolved, I was too exhausted to focus on anything strategic. It's hard to admit this, but I dread Monday mornings. I'm not burnt out from overwork, I'm burnt out from dealing with people. Is it normal to feel that way? Can leadership be reshaped to fit who I am, or am I just not cut out for this?
Oh, please don't feel this way.
What would you advise this letter writer? Where would you start with this person?
First, I want to give some hope that leadership is not like that. Although there might be moments or times that, temporarily can feel this way. But it's like, well, the good news is that all these are symptoms. The fact that you are struggling and all this, it tells you that, okay, there might be some development areas that you can explore, right? To strengthen yourself. So is from an analogy of, falling sick. Sometimes you get a migraine here, you get a stuffy nose there. These are symptoms. It doesn't mean that you have to live like this. And therefore, it's really to unpack. I think the challenge here is about dealing with people. So, first of all, I do acknowledge that leadership is complex. It really takes intentional efforts, like what we just spoke about. It is not to be left by chance. And there are basically structural or process and relational challenges. What most times its surface seems to be relational or people challenges. The good news is that there are actually structural processes, aspects you can leverage or levers for you to pull to actually get things done. So one is really about, when it comes to mediating conflicts and all this, is it the letter writer is in the position to mediate all these, or how can you actually systemize conflict management to actually get the whole team involved, to hold each other accountable, and and talk things out and find a way to systemize things when people feel unhappy about. All these can actually come from a system perspective. So leaders, a lot of time, is not about you overcoming problems yourself. But it's about how can you build a system that people can do things themselves.
Wow.
So it's to take on that step, because a lot of time first-time leaders, especially first-time managers who are newly promoted, because they are promoted for being competent. And the biggest paradigm shift from an individual contributor to a leader is that as an individual contributor, you add value by doing things yourself, right, to demonstrate capability. But as a leader, and as the more senior you go, the bigger or the more complex system you need to build. And that is the value add that you truly give to the organization for being in leadership roles. So I think it's really important to really unpack, although it appears like a people issue, but I think there are subsequently, it just tells me that maybe there are certain systems or processes not in place to support this, such that it all turns out into ego wars and stuff like that. I'd like to hear your views.
You brought a good point about when a competent individual contributor is being promoted. Most of the time it's because they have got technical skills to be able to solve it, right? So when this person used the word firefighting, it feels like this person is approaching the problem like approaching a task, rather than approaching it to understand that it's actually a people issue in this case. So it's like, I've got to solve this, right? So they put on the Bob the Builder hat, now then you got to fix it, right? In this case. So and I think it could be just using a wrong tool to a certain extent to be able to fix it. So instead of, like for example, one thing that I may want to suggest for this letter writer is to consider maybe learning coaching, for example, learning coaching skills to be able to navigate and so on, and to be able to build, like you say, systems so that, you know, to leverage on other people to be able to help solve it. So instead of like because I'm the boss in this case, so I need to fix everything, right? So I think this is the person needs to understand that yes, you know, fix it, but not, you don't have to fix it everything yourself in this case, right?
All the time.
So it is also to be able to, when you coach somebody, then you're teaching them how to fish as well, so this thing won't happen again. Plus also, if you to build a supportive system enough, that they will kind of sort it out on their own, right? So that is something which I would ask. I would probably recommend this letter writer to have this additional people skill management into his or her toolbox in this case, on top of the work that he or she is already doing. The other thing that I would probably ask this letter writer to do is to maybe do a personality test of some kind of test, right? Why is because if you don't know who you are, how you handle such stress in this case, right, or things which you are not very familiar with, so you could either absorb it like a sponge, or you could avoid it, or you could run away, or you can freeze and so on, all these things, right? So in this case, I wonder if the letter writer is absorbing all these things like a sponge. So that's why it's really taking emotional toll on that person. So if they understand their personality type, to say, oh, how I deal with such things is because I'm so and so, that kind of person, or then hence that's why I need to relook into how I deal with it. I think that's also very important. So it's to know yourself as well. So I think that is another thing that this letter writer can consider doing to understand how he or she can cope with stress. Any thoughts?
I think the two things that was brought up in the letter was the firefighting and also the ego, right? So there are many reasons why a team would end up firefighting. I think either it's a lack of clarity or structural issues, or that there was like competing priorities and nobody helped to prioritize, or that people are not airing concerns out early enough such that everything become a crisis. So I think that these are some of the things to deep dive into to find out which is which. I think what is challenging for a lot of young leaders or mid-management is that everything look like a ball of yarn where, you know, everything is convoluted and tangled. And so learning how to differentiate and troubleshoot, I think, is a great skill to have, to find out what is a real problem statement. And for ego fights, basically, it just leads to a few possible causes that people feel unheard of. That means they are not seen, they are not heard, they don't feel understood. And therefore people get into a defensive or stubborn mode of trying to push their way through. Or people don't understand. So that's where the personality tool can come in to actually help the whole team understand one another better, and how best to engage one another, where are the hot red buttons not to press, and what are the stress behaviors, you know, what triggers each person. With a deeper level of understanding and alignment, I think usually the firefighting will stop.
I think so what you're saying is to upfront understand what starts the fire and to prevent the fire from even starting in this case, right? I think it is really about, so if this person is running a small team, or maybe like I would say that, so usually what I would advise for young leaders is that if you are going to be owning, imagine like owning your own asset, own house in this case, right? You're going to have some rules and engagement, or when someone comes to your house, you can't just be, you know, doing all sorts of things. So there needs to be a certain kind of like, you come into my house, then you need to be behaving a certain way, or even if you come into my car, you need to be behaving a certain way in this case, right? So I think this needs to be established upfront. I'm not too sure whether the letter writer did establish such rules or engagement or culture, his or her culture. So I think that is where, like you say, the clarity may not be there. So, for example, revisit again the clarity of roles and responsibilities. Revisit again non-negotiables, right? Revisit again clarity of the outcomes, the mission for the why are they there in this case. So I think those things are really important, so that we can prevent the fire. I'm not saying the fire won't happen. I'm saying at least you can prevent the fire from appearing in this case. And so once you establish the ground rules, establish the rules of engagement and so on, then in fact that is where people can thrive further in this case, right? Because you've established the parameters so that they can kind of creatively run around the area.
Yes.
So rather than there's no boundaries, there's no so then it becomes very, there's no, people always say that it's like if you draw boundaries and all, then you will limit the person's freedom in this case, which I totally disagree. It's because when there's no boundaries, in fact, there's no freedom because you don't know what you can do. There's no rules engagement in this case. But when you draw a boundary, for example, like football, when you draw to say, okay, you need to be playing within this, and then these are some of the rules. Other than that, go ahead, here's the ball, play. You can see them really, really going all out to play instead of like a whole giant field with no lines, right? It's like, where do I even start? That kind of thing. I'm just going to be playing one little corner, that kind of thing, right? But now to say, okay, this is everything that you can do within this, go ahead and play, and then you can see the joy and the freedom. So I think those things need to be able to set up front to say this is how I would like to run my ship in this case, and so that you again just to prevent that burnout of possibility from over firefighting in this case.
I love the way you define boundary and the purpose of it. So young leaders want to learn how to define what is a boundary versus what is a cage. I think what you're afraid is to be caged in, or to be micromanaged in. But that the boundary is meant to protect and give permission or empowerment. So of course, when the boundary becomes so strong, it becomes like a brick wall, or and all this. Then it becomes a cage, right? So as a leader is always to revisit and upgrade that definition to see how big or how small the team is, and therefore what is the size of the so-called boundary or non-negotiable, so that people can operate safely without second-guessing one another all the time.
100%.
Whether I'm touching a boundary, and because like you say, if it's just a wide open field, different people will bring their own boundary in. It's not that it won't be a boundary. Then you end up like, sometimes I don't even know if I've crossed the boundary of someone else's. And it gets so unclear, and everybody has a second guess, and then it's just not helpful.
Okay, great. I think the other thing that I would probably ask is this thing, okay, even after all this thing this person has tried, but this person still feel extremely burnt out. I think the question that this person need to really ask themselves is that, really, are they cut out for leadership in this case, right? It's going to be an honest conversation, because some people, they just love to be an individual contributor rather than taking care of people below them, because for whatever reason, so it's like, I think like earlier on that you said that not everyone is cut out to be a leader, same as not everyone is cut out to be a parent, right? In this case, right? So it's not for everyone, and to understand that leadership, the primary role does come with all this conflict management and this and so on, right? And it's not just task only in this case. So I think it's something which the letter writer needs to be able to ask that question. And I would like to probably finish off this thought of mine with a movie reference, since I am movie enthusiast. But I think it's the Top Gun Maverick, right? The second Top Gun in this case. And for those who haven't watched it yet, this is not spoiler. So Top Gun as a Maverick, Tom Cruise in this case, After many years, of course, he was brought back into the academy, and his role was to grow the whole bunch of new recruits in his case, right? And he tried. He really, really tried. He failed miserably. He just didn't know how to go about doing it in this case, right? And he found that he was just better being a maverick in this case, just being that person that goes out there to the front line rather than being a teacher in this case or being a trainer. Yeah. So, but it took him a while. He tried. He did not say he didn't. He wasn't stubborn about it. He tried and so on. Yeah. But he just found it very difficult, right? So I think it's a question you can ask yourself, like, am I really cut out for this as well? But of course, I would say please try out whatever that we have said. But after a while, if it's still not working out, then maybe you need to revisit this question of really am I cut out to be in a leadership position?
Yes, I think the key point is whether you have tried hard enough to begin with, to give yourself a chance, right? Because I want to urge or encourage all young leaders is that whatever you feel uncomfortable or difficult doesn't mean it's not good for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when now being first-time managers, you're dealing with a lot of people issues that you feel like, oh my God, it's so difficult, it's so emotionally draining. But is it good for you? I would say yes, if you look on the high side. Yeah, after a year or two, you try hard enough and you try to learn how to overcome all these, it really serves you great in your life throughout, in all situations. When one day you become a parent, when one day you have to deal with someone else, close, that you cannot walk away all the time. So I think leadership really is a rehearsal for life, I feel.
Yes.
Especially for parenting role, before you become a parent, try to be a leader first. And because you picked up a lot of skills from there. So I do want to urge leaders, before they conclude that they are not good with this or that, I think try hard enough and see what can you grow out of.
Fantastic. Okay. Do you think we covered everything that we needed to cover for this letter writer?
I think so. I think that would be a good start for him or her.
Okay, so what are we saying to the letter writer is that first is to acknowledge, first of all is to normalize the fact that this is part of the package. This is part of being a leader in this case. And to your most recent point, it is to try, to understand that this is all part of it and to continue to work on it in this case. Because it will be really helpful for you, especially if you decide to be a parent later on, or it's going to be helpful for much later on. I mean, especially people management in this case. So I think that is to understand that it comes with the package that you sign up for, being a leader, and also to some of the skills or some of the things that this person can consider, this letter writer can consider, is also not to do this all by themselves or by himself in this case, but to be able to create a culture or a system to to say that that's all of us, we can actually do this together in this case, right? And some skills that this person can consider is to learn how to coach better. That's one, and also perhaps take on a personality test to understand how they cope with stress in this case. And we talked about as well to set it up front in terms of clear expectations, clarity of the rules for engagement, right? To draw proper boundaries, but not cagey sort of boundaries, but to be able to draw enough boundaries for them to say, hey, this is the freedom and this is the permission that you can operate in this space, so that they don't feel stifled, they don't feel that they're being micromanaged. I think a lot of times, I think what really caught my attention is when you say that it's not about cage, right? It's about giving them that. If not, then everyone will bring in their own set of boundaries, which will not be very helpful for them, and then it wouldn't be a safe space for them to play in this case. And I think, so I think that's about it.